basically a masked way of giving ourselves permission to do things that aren't great for us. You've heard everything in moderation, or as long as I eat this or drink this or do this in moderation, it's okay. But our physical body doesn't actually like moderation. Welcome to the Misdiagnosed Podcast, where we uncover the truth about all things mental health, from what's really causing mental illness symptoms to why the industry of psychiatry and big pharma don't seem all that interested in helping people heal. This show will get your hands dirty so you can know the truth and live free. I'm your host, Caitlin Pyle, and I've healed from multiple mental illness symptoms, including bipolar disorder, ADHD, OCD, clinical depression, extreme anxiety, and PTSD. Psychiatrists almost ruined my life, but I live to tell about it, and I'm sharing it all here on this show. Join us as we explore how to spot the lies the mental health industry tries to sell us. Welcome back to the Misdiagnosed Podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Pyle, and we're finally starting the chapter on brainwashing. I should say the section on brainwashing. If you're new to the show, we're slowly but surely, like a herd of turtles, moving through Anthony Williams' Brain Saver book, chapter by chapter. I'm summarizing it for you, so you don't have to read it, and I'm summarizing it very slowly, so you're not missing anything. I'm not leaving anything out. I read through everything before I record the show and even during recording to make sure that I don't leave anything out. And if I mess something up, I scrap that out of the show and re-record it. So we're getting it all. And I've been excited about part 2 of the book. It's called Brainwashed. We just finished part 1 of the book, which went through all of the underlying causes of the mental illness symptoms that have often been ascribed to be a permanent genetic condition, but they are not, because they have underlying causes that are physiological in nature related to things like dehydration, deficiency, toxicity from things like heavy metals, radiation, DDT, all kinds of stuff. So now we're going to get into some of the trends and things that pop up. And this is also the section of the book that talks about alcohol and caffeine. So the first couple of chapters deal with moderation and microdosing, and I think you'll find what Anthony has to say and what I have to say, hopefully, about this to be pretty interesting. Yeah, so moving into the topic of moderation, it really doesn't work for anybody. It's basically a masked way of giving ourselves permission to do things that aren't great for us, right? You've heard, I'm sure you've heard everything in moderation. Or as long as I eat this or drink this or do this in moderation, it's okay. But our physical body doesn't actually like moderation. Our body is governed by our subconscious and our consciousness, our subconsciousness and our consciousness. And if you've ever read anything by Joe Dispenza or Dr. Bruce Lipton, then you have heard of this before. Like we're running on programs. And they're not the only ones talking about this. Obviously, it's becoming a more up-and-coming topic, especially as it relates to epigenetics and how everything around us is influencing the decisions we make kind of on autopilot. Our mind is made up of our subconscious and our consciousness. And it can be injured and persuaded, either or both. So it can be persuaded to want something our physical body doesn't want. And it's interesting that I'm recording this episode now talking about moderation because I've been a little bit, I don't want to say bored, but maybe it is bored as I wait for my van to be ready. And actually, as I'm recording this, I'm really excited to tell you that tomorrow morning I'm flying out. I'm recording this on Sunday, August 5th or 6th. August 6th. And tomorrow is the 7th. I don't know when this will air, but I will have gotten my van by the time you listen to it, and it is very exciting. And I do plan on pivoting the TikTok channel. I don't know when I am going to do it. I think I have to record something to like break the news. Maybe not. I don't have that many followers, right? And ultimately, I want to do vlogging for me and to focus on not just stuff on the outside, including other people, right? I started the TikTok channel and I started this podcast to share what I had learned, which I am doing and I'm enjoying. But I also feel a little bit drained by it from time to time. I tend to procrastinate doing the new episodes, to which I have arrived at the conclusion that I need to continue my focus on the inner work. And I feel like in some ways I've been avoiding it in some ways. That's why I just need to sit down and journal more, right? But I just haven't been. I've just been stuck in this transition for a while, and I'm finally getting out of it. I'm making changes in my home little by little every day. It is exhausting. I've been taking a lot of breaks because I've been avoiding taking Adderall. And yeah, to bring that full circle, that boring feeling is what drives me to think like, oh my gosh, this would be so much more enjoyable. All this tedious crap I have to do to clear out my house and declutter and sort things and pack things and move things and organize things would be so much more fun if I took a little bit of Adderall, right? So I'll tell myself, oh, like only 5 milligrams. But I know that even the 5 milligrams of amphetamine salts, right, comes at a cost. And in the past, I've done it enough times in so-called moderation. And I used to take it 6 days a week, right? I'd force myself to take like a day off when I was just going to sit around and do nothing, right? And I think that going from 6 days a week to a couple of times a week to maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks, I've spaced out. It's probably been 2 months since I've had Adderall. And I want to keep it for as long as possible to really give my body a fair chance, right? Instead of making all this progress of detoxing and regenerating. And then I like put in some toxic heavy metals, some colors, all this stuff that I've been consciously avoiding. Adderall has it all. It has the blue number 1, it has aluminum, it has all this crap in it. Not to mention the amphetamine salts that cranks up my adrenal glands that I've been trying to heal. It's just counterproductive. So yeah, I bought this t-shirt online. This is related, I promise. I bought this t-shirt online that says Sloth Hiking Team and has a picture of a sloth on it, of course. And then the little tagline below the sloth says, "We get there when we get there." And I feel like that is my mantra for this period of my life, because I intended to be done with the house project months ago, but it has dragged on. I don't want to blame the designer at all. She has other projects. She lost her assistant, all this stuff, and then things keep getting delayed. But I also tell myself, I'm in no hurry. I really am not. I would like to be making money off this house sooner rather than later. But if that were to happen sooner, I put myself under more stress than I really need to be under at this time of my life. And so I am applying the sloth mantra, we get there when we get there, to to this project too. There really is no reason to hurry. I don't have to make the money now. I'm not losing anything. I'm gaining time in the present. I'm gaining the ability to move at my own pace without any stress, because stress is the exact opposite of what I want. So it's all a win. But I have been thinking about the alcohol, my boring nights. I'm like, oh man, like, especially if I watch TV and there's like, they're drinking on TV. It's the power of suggestion, right? I've wanted to order cupcakes. I've wanted to make cupcakes. I don't have all the ingredients on purpose. I have wanted to drink whiskey, just because of things I watch on TV. We are so suggestible. But I've taken those as opportunities to observe, right? I will observe myself, not judge myself, and say, wow, like I'm observing a moment where I have felt suggestible and I've felt the temptation based on something that has crossed my mind. And so I guess I would just encourage anyone listening to this to not judge themselves when they're finding themselves thinking about going back to old habits or doing something that would be more toxifying instead of detoxifying. It happens to all of us because we're programmed, right? We watch these TV shows. We see these cool, beautiful, sexy characters on TV just eating a pizza, which I did have a pizza. I ordered an 11-inch pizza from Blaze Pizza on Friday night. I had one slice. And I had a couple of pieces of the bread because I ordered like the pesto drizzle cheesy bread too. It totally broke all of my protocols that I'm trying to follow, the gluten-free, dairy-free thing. but I am making some progress still because I didn't eat the whole thing. It took me, I got 4 meals out of it, essentially, the food that I ordered on Friday night. And I'm proud of myself. Like, I could have just binged, but I didn't. I had gotten a migraine the night before, and I can definitely trace that to what I ate with my friends on Wednesday. I went to Four Rivers Barbecue and I got the vegan burnt ends sandwich, and I felt like crap later that day. And then Thursday I got a migraine, and I think it just had to do with all the junk that's in there. But so I have been this week, it's such a timely episode that I'm recording this, been this week telling myself, oh, everything in moderation, but even that moderation is hurting me and I can feel it. But that's my body becoming more aware, and I'm becoming better at noticing the negative effects of even just a little bit of poison, right? I'm drinking a heavy metal detox smoothie as I record this. I have a couple in the fridge. I've been very blessed to have my assistant Renee here with me 4 days a week. She can juice for me and make my smoothies for me when I don't feel like it, which is most of the time. But hey, I'm paying someone to do things for me, so I might as well have them do things that I don't feel like doing. I can do them when she's not here. It's just way better if someone's already getting paid to be here to have them do things like that, And I'm not going to have that in the van, and I realize that. So I'm coming up with strategies to how to make things easier for me in that way. So anyway, our free will is part of how we step outside the box in life, Anthony says. It's how we embark on trying to heal when we aren't being given the true answers. Like many of us are trying to overcome these mental illness symptoms and who are not accepting, oh, you have bipolar disorder or you have ADHD, as if it's some kind of freaking virus, and not just the symptoms that have been labeled as a disorder that allegedly won't go away. We get fed all kinds of BS about it. And we can make 2 different kinds of mistakes relating to moderation. The first mistake is we can have a test in front of us in school and get several true or false questions wrong. Just those easy, I guess they're not easy, 50% odds of getting it wrong. We can also make a mistake crossing our T's and dotting our I's. We can make a mathematical mistake. And in this type of mistake, there's no free will, or at least not our free will. The free will behind the test was the free will of an institution or the person who designed it. They get to choose the questions, right? We only used our free will to decide to sit down, fill it out, and try to answer the questions as best we can. Then we make mistakes that affect our soul. That's the second kind of mistake. Mistakes through decision processes using our conscious mind that aren't about exact calculations, formulations, or word choices. We can make mistakes that are outside the realm of punching numbers and answering questions that we've studied and prepared for and memorized. As a really good test taker, I am relating a lot to this because I was very good at taking tests. While making these other kinds of decisions, our soul can be impacted. These are the mistakes we make with our free will. So when we're sick, the diagnostic testing process is similar to the types of tests that we take in school. So we get a physical test that the doctor prescribed, and there's a drug that the doctor prescribed, and there's another test, and there's another drug, and another test, and another drug. We use our free will only to try all these tests and all these treatments, just like we use our free will to sit down and take a test at school. So we go through the MRIs, CT scans, the blood panels, and all that stuff. We still are not better, though, after that. That leaves us in the realm of not finding answers. So we find ourselves sitting at home one night telling ourselves we just really need to heal. We have to find an answer. Gosh, it makes a lot of sense. I can remember sitting on my couch suicidal and thinking, I can't live like this, but I also know that I don't have to live like this forever. I wasn't always like this. There's something that I'm not seeing. I know that there's something else. And it took me probably another year before my friend gave me Medical Medium, the book, after searching for answers for that whole full year. Because I got my brain scan in March of 2021. I received Medical Medium in March of 2022. Or maybe it was May. I really don't remember. It doesn't matter. But regardless, I was on my way. And so all this means is we have to use our free will like never before to find answers for our physical body. It's not black and white, as we soon discover. It's really not about taking a test at an institution. It's not about memorizing the answers. It's not about being indoctrinated to a place where we have all our eggs in one basket or in the right basket. Instead, finding the answers for our health journey, I guess, it becomes a journey. Kind of like when we're looking for love, when we're lonely, we want a partner to share our lives with, and there can almost be a desperation of our consciousness in some situations that brings the soul into a different realm. Just like when we're searching for love, we're reaching this same kind of point in our search for healing. It's not about what looks perfect on paper anymore, or even what makes sense anymore. We end up taking risks. We say things like, we'll try anything. I'll try anything. And that's where I was. I was willing to try anything, even go spend $5,000 to get my brain scan at Dr. Amon's clinic, which in retrospect, in ways that I don't really understand, it put me on the right track towards healing. Would I spend the $5,000 again? No. Considering initially my doctor wanted to put me on Parnate, which is an MAO inhibitor, like a really dangerous antidepressant. And the fact that that was one of his first lines of treatment, and I refused it because I just knew I'm not going on antidepressant, especially if I eat dairy, it could kill me, like, or something with soy in it. I wasn't willing to take that risk, and I'm glad I didn't. But yeah, you live and learn. Everything was a continuing education, in my opinion. So yeah, when we take those kinds of risks, the soul really has no choice but to go along for the ride with whatever we're getting pushed into and whatever our consciousness is pushing our soul into, even if it's not best for our soul and physical brain and body. And this is where we can make mistakes if our consciousness is peer pressured, convinced, persuaded, or conditioned into using information or practices that don't align with healing or that even interfere with healing. And moderation is one of those practices. There's nothing wrong with having that. Have you heard that before? You should just eat what you want. You need to just be balanced. We're told that if we only engage in reasonable amounts, questionable foods and certain practices like microdosing, caffeine, and even alcohol can benefit us. So we give them a try and we end up set back even more in our healing, whether we know it or not, because our conditioning is so strong. We blame ourselves for these practices not working out instead of blaming the substances themselves. Isn't that crazy? We say, oh, well, it didn't work for me. Like, I guess I just didn't do it right, or I didn't stick with it long enough, or whatever. But the substances themselves aren't doing what they're alleged to do. They have no actual benefit. And we can even become so attached to these practices, specifically caffeine and specifically alcohol, microdosing. I've had friends who microdose mushrooms and they swear by it. I've had a couple of mushroom microdoses and I felt nothing. I'm like, you are just full of shit, People can get so attached that they guard the practices with their lives, even though essentially they're harming their lives. We've been pushed so often into finding fault with ourselves, though, and finding fault with our brains and our bodies. We've been conditioned to do that. That's why we get told that things are genetic, so we can more easily blame ourselves. And self-blame becomes our default setting. Moderation can't really be defined. Even though you might see the definition of the word in the dictionary, you should still see it as undefinable because moderation is not measurable. It's a definition without rules because it's different for everyone. Each individual's limitations are different. One person might be practicing moderation, and that person's version of moderation could kill another person. And that's true whether we're talking about alcohol, psychedelics, or even food. Someone who is allergic to nuts, for example, could die from someone else's level of nuts in so-called moderation. We hear moderation talked about a lot when it comes to food. Choosing to eat a food in moderation is born from knowing somewhere deep inside you that the food you're choosing may not be safe to eat a lot of or to eat constantly. And we use the term moderation to give ourselves permission to consume that food anyway, even though something inside us knows that we're not supposed to be eating those foods, say a fried food, a greasy food every day, or cakes, cookies, donuts every single day. Large amounts of those foods. We know that it's not safe to eat them all the time. We learn along the way that it's not the best choice and could lead to some kind of health complication. So we do it in quote unquote moderation. Moderation is permission to self-indulge, or more accurately, self-sabotage. Drinking in moderation is also a term you'll hear a lot. Maybe you even use the term yourself. I know I have. As with any other substance, using the term moderation around alcohol gives us a fuzzy, safe, warm feeling inside. It's permission to drink in any capacity we feel is appropriate. It's very subjective. It's a slippery slope. One person may drink every single day and still call this moderation. Another person may drink in the afternoons and feel that that's moderation because they're not drinking in the morning. The point is that everybody's moderation when it comes to alcohol is different, just like with food. For some people, drinking on the weekends may be what they do. Others, maybe just one glass of wine a night, but every night. And still for other people, moderation may be getting straight out drunk just once a month. We hide our alcohol addiction behind the word moderation as if it's a shield keeping us from harm. But it's not, because meanwhile, we make those who recognize themselves as addicts feel different or faulty when that's far from the case. And there's going to be an episode on just alcohol coming up, so we're not going to get too far into alcohol now. So where does all this moderation stuff come from? Because even when we know better, when we know not to consume something that isn't the best for our health and well-being, like me with the pizza, it was so good though. It's pleasure seeking is what it is. Like we, especially people who have ever struggled with ADHD-like symptoms, we seek pleasure from food. We want to enjoy we want to enjoy everything we do, or we don't want to do it. And sometimes that can come out in the food we eat. Like me with the pizza and occasionally Taco Bell. Sometimes it is stated explicitly, like in our media, that we should do it in moderation. Think like a CNN or a Good Morning America report about, some wine is good for you and coffee is good for you. Like just that moderation is used to encourage us to do it anyway, even though there's plenty of research that tells us that it's not good. And other times the message of moderation is subliminal, where it's like I was saying, watching a TV show and there's people drinking or they're eating pizza and they just have these things that it just makes it look good or cool, or maybe you're hungry while you're watching it and that suggestion, that subliminal messaging makes you decide that you want pizza as well. Maybe not that night, but 2 days later, it's stuck with you. The point is that the suggestion to enjoy and indulge moderation is always in our face somewhere, wherever we turn. And it's nothing new either. It goes back hundreds and hundreds of years to talk about where it all comes from in our human civilization. It goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, for as long as it's been human conditioning to eat ourselves sick. The concept of everything in moderation arose in ancient times when people first started to have the type of access that allowed them to indulge in excessive consumption of all kinds. Hand in hand with this newfound instant gratification, the concept of moderation has developed as a way to rein it all in. This moderation knowledge has now been in our consciousness as a culture for centuries. If we're not taught to be careful and put limitations on what, how, when, why, or how much we consume, we can kill ourselves in one capacity or another. Even before the word moderation emerged, the concept emerged as a way to protect ourselves. And now moderation is being used to unprotect ourselves. We're using it as a permission to poison ourselves. Whatever we want to indulge in or harm ourselves with, we can do so in good conscience by saying that we're doing it in quote unquote moderation. And we're meant to have the tools and knowledge and resources to not go down this road, though. It's hard to break away from the status quo of moderation because it's so built into society. So that means if you choose to fight the brainwashing of this moderation stuff, you're going to get your wrist smacked, like a little punishment. You get punished by people who don't want to break their own habits and lifestyles of using moderation to consume foods and substances that aren't benefiting them. Those who give themselves permission to indulge in what they know deep down isn't good for them find it unsettling and even threatening when you decide to go in your own direction. It makes them uncomfortable when you start to find empowerment and take control over your health and become aware that certain foods and substances, even when they're used in moderation, aren't doing us any justice or good. Instead of questioning their own practices, though, the champions of moderation tend to point to you as being the one out of balance, right? The more uncomfortable they feel, the higher and more insistently they start waving that moderation flag. But we are smart and our souls are wise. When we finally have the knowledge, the correct knowledge about how to heal, we have the potential to recognize it. If we have struggled enough with our health that the blindfold of all the dogma that we've been fed about our health comes off, then we can see the information here for what it is. And it's the truth. This is the information that is in the medical medium books. It's the stuff that is ahead of its time when it comes to healing and the whole medical space. It's like recognizing a soulmate after years of bad relationships, finding this information. And I remember the day that I read the first medical medium book. It was not even the new one with the information about COVID in it. It was the first, it was like a paperback from 2015. I read it in one day and I was so, I guess, mesmerized by it, but in the best way. I knew based on the words in the book that they were true. It resonated with me, and when something resonates with you and you just know it's true, that's the feeling that I had. And I knew that my search and my hunt and my suffering in terms of trying to find something that was helping me and the solution to what issues I was having was finally over. I knew it. Yeah, so whether suddenly or slowly, we realize when we find this information that the past relationships with the old stuff and our old doctors and our old ways of trying to heal ourselves that we sought in our desperation, they weren't wrong because of some flaw in who we are. So just like a healthy relationship, the truth about healing may push us to grow, which I can look back. I can look back on the last year and a half, and I've definitely grown. And we have to give ourselves that chance to grow. We have to give ourselves that chance. And if we do that, then we're also giving ourselves the chance to heal. But when we take moderation and apply it to the world of poisons and toxins, like caffeine, like alcohol, like Adderall, we push it too far. And now we're taking the basic problematic standard of moderation and exalting it to a place of recklessness. So in upcoming episodes, we're going to be talking more about that. We had several episodes about addiction. If you have not listened to those, I highly recommend it. You'll learn why it's so easy to get hooked on certain substances and activities. Yeah, and in the upcoming episodes, we're going to learn just how much of the stuff we're told is healthy is not, even in small amounts. And so upcoming, like the next episode, we're going to be talking about microdosing psychedelics, something I have a little bit of experience with. And then we'll get to caffeine and alcohol because those things have interesting ways of interacting with the brain and the body, and people don't necessarily understand that, and they buy into lies about what they're actually doing in the brain. And they may feel good initially for the same reason that a lot of medications feel good initially. Is because it's causing adrenaline to pump through your system in one way or another. Like that's why they put caffeine into a lot of psychotropic, I guess not psychotropic drugs, but medications out there to get the illusion that they're helping because the caffeine pumps adrenaline through the body and convinces the user that they're feeling better, but it's actually just the caffeine and the adrenaline. So yeah, we're going to be learning a lot about those things in the upcoming episodes. This one was just kind of opening up, and it's about moderation. I hope you enjoyed it. I always love doing these episodes and working through these chapters again because I read the whole book already. I read the chapters again before I record, and then I go through the stuff that I've highlighted to make sure I don't miss anything as I record. So yeah, as someone who has definitely waved the moderation flag many times in the past and heard many people tell me that moderation is the way to go when it comes to any of this stuff, like you can moderate, but is it really helping? Especially if you're trying to heal actively, if you're trying to heal your adrenals, if you're trying to heal your thyroid, if you're trying to heal your liver, it's like throwing a like a trap in your path. and you're going to trip over it and skin your knee, and you might be able to keep going. You might be able to keep healing, but now you've got something else to heal, like a little thing that's just going to slow you down and not make the journey as enjoyable or as efficient as it could be, adding fuel to a fire that you're trying to put out actively. It's self-sabotage in a way that is very often, I would say almost all the time, completely unconscious. And becoming aware of what the so-called moderation is doing to us in the journey of healing, especially if you're actively on a journey of healing, it will make you think twice about making the certain choices that you would have made in times past, in past versions of yourself. So yeah, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Misdiagnosed on moderation. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Misdiagnosed podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. If you know someone else out there who'd benefit from what we share on this show, please don't hesitate to share this episode with them.